Well, that takes us to our last panel of the day. And we have a very exciting panel. Dalila, who is the CFO of Community Philanthropy for JPMorgan Chase, will lead us in a very dynamic conversation with, here we have Adam and Nick and Jonathan, who are coming to the stage, around economics and entrepreneurship and social innovation and how all these things come together. So a really good way to tie us up for the entire session. Thanks, Dalila.
Thank you, Shannon. And Howard, I hope I'm on the early end of my 40 chances, but thank you. So as Shannon mentioned, I'm CFO of the Global Philanthropy Division at JPMorgan Chase. We're proud to be one of the presenting sponsors of the Social Innovation Summit. And also many of you were at the pre-conference event yesterday, so we're definitely proud to be your hosts. So good afternoon, welcome, and it's the last panel, but we're gonna get energized about this topic. So first, at JPMorgan Chase, we definitely consider ourselves to be both practitioners and students of social innovation. I think that's true for everybody in the room today and our esteemed panelists. And today we're going to be talking about the economic development space with the focus on entrepreneurship. I also want to note that at the end of this panel, not that these three gentlemen aren't enough to hold your attention, but we will also be announcing the 10 deserving not-for-profits who will be receiving two $25,000 grants from Chase as part of our crowdsource initiative over the past 2 days. So stay tuned for that. So innovation. Innovation definitely requires us to embrace failure. Yet failure is often a dirty word, right? So how do we transform failure into a learning opportunity? I want to start with Nick Beim, who's a general partner at Matrix Partners, also on the board of Endeavor, to talk a little bit about what he does, but to answer this question, how can we better embrace failure and really help entrepreneurs and funders and NGOs understand that innovation and failure have to go hand in hand?
Great. Well, I guess by way of introduction, I should start off by saying, thanks. By way of introduction, I should start off by saying I never thought I'd have the opportunity to be part of an opening act for Alicia Keys. Thrilled to do that. I know my mom and my sister would be very proud. So a quick bit of background just to expand. I'm a venture capitalist. I invest in early stage companies. I'm based in New York. Some of the companies you may know of, the Gilt Group, JetSetter, theladders.com, Care.com, and others. I'm also on the board of a very innovative nonprofit that some of you may be familiar with called Endeavor that helps entrepreneurs in developing countries and is one of the most impressive organizations on the social innovation frontier. My experience in both worlds will infuse the comments. On the subject of failure, if you look at the most successful entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world, they embrace failure. They have a very tolerant attitude towards failure. And I think there are two reasons for that. And by the way, that's unusual in the broader world of business. I think in the United States, we have a relatively liberal view of failure, but we have an extremely liberal view in the tech ecosystems. And I think one reason is that the tech ecosystems thrive on risk-taking, and failure is an inevitable outcome of risk-taking. But there's a deeper reason, which is that I think, as with love and alcohol, so with entrepreneurship and venture capital, you learn the most through your mistakes. You really think, what did I do wrong? How could I do better? And it creates an open-mindedness that I think is essential to be successful in a company. Whenever creating a business plan is a little bit like creating a war plan for generals, that the plan sort of goes out the window as soon as you start operating. And you need adaptability. And you need an open-ended mindset that will help you adapt. So I would add the caveat that failure is great as long as you don't keep doing it. It's fine for some learning, but I think the virtue that I would extol at a higher level is adaptability, which is fed by failure and experience with failure.
Thank you, Nick. I'm still stuck on the fact of thinking about, wishing I could see what all of you were thinking when Nick said love and alcohol. So we'll discuss that later at the reception. Adam Brotman, Chief Digital Officer at Starbucks. What are your views on innovation and failure?
Can you guys hear me okay? It's an interesting question. You posed it to us in the hallway before we got here, so we didn't have a chance to rehearse it. And I'll be honest with you, it hit an open nerve because at Starbucks, I'd like to say, oh, we're all about fail fast and we don't care and we're willing to just take chances. And, there's a bit of that in our vernacular and in our culture, but we're pretty scared of failure, to be honest. And at Starbucks, we thrive on the fact that we're scared of failure. We are willing to fail and move on, and we're willing to take chances. So we'll try and innovate and do things that if we fail, we move on. But it motivates us in a lot of ways, and we make a lot of mistakes. So we admit our mistakes, and we use failure, much like your alcohol example. We've definitely learned a lot of lessons and tried to move on and learn from those lessons. But I would be lying if I said that we don't fear failure, and I think it motivates us to be innovative as we can be.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for that candid answer. And I think probably many of us in the room share that, and just being part of a company that definitely stands up, accepts that we make mistakes, but we move forward and we make things better. I think that's true for many of us here today. Jonathan Greenblatt is with us, who's the director of the Office of Social Innovation at the White House. With the launch of initiatives like the $50 million Social Innovation Fund, the Jobs Act, can you talk to us about the current administration and how you leverage social innovation to inform the president's agenda?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with such an esteemed panel, and I would feel remiss if I didn't say something. I've been to a lot of these social innovation conferences and a lot of these things that are kind of on the circuit. I don't think I have ever heard a presentation as moving and as meaningful as Steve Gleason's this morning. Because sometimes I think we get caught up in the lingo and the jargon, and Steve made it all very real, and it was very humbling for me, and I just want to sort of honor that and what he did today. How many of you know about the Office of Social Innovation at the White House? Raise your hands. Oh, a few. That's pretty good, because most people don't even know we exist. But in fact, social innovation has been really a core element of the Obama administration. And it was a strategy and an idea that the president laid out as a candidate in 2008. And one of the first things that he did as president in 2009 was create this office, which is focused on a really simple idea: elevating community solutions. So I'll keep it brief, but the president basically believes that the best answers, the way we'll solve our problems, is not by creating big, new top-down programs in Washington. It's instead by cultivating bottom-up practices. It's by unleashing the entrepreneurs. It's by unlocking the talent. It's by creating the conditions in which people like all of you in this room can prosper and flourish. So that's what the office is all about. Sometimes that means, let's say, scaling up a proven approach. And the Social Innovation Fund, which is essentially a $50 million fund of funds, provides growth capital to high-impact nonprofits. It's designed to identify what works and scale it up. Sometimes we'll help pilot a promising approach. So we made an announcement late last year about the fact we put $100 million in the budget for Pay for Success, or what some of you may know as social impact bonds. We believe it's an idea worth pursuing, to kind of play on June's phrase. And sometimes we'll spotlight where attention is appropriate, and we'll try to use the bully pulpit and the convening authority of the White House, again, to shine a spotlight on people just like you who are doing great things. So for us, at human capital, financial capital, there are different ways we can think about innovation. But what we know is it's not in Washington. It's not something you kind of contrive over a conference table. It happens out in cities, in towns, in urban areas, in rural areas like Howard, who was here just a few minutes ago. And that's what we're trying to not only kindle, but allow to take place at scale.
Thank you, Jonathan. Adam, under your leadership, Starbucks has recently launched the Create Jobs initiative. Can you talk to us about the genesis, the impetus for that initiative, and how you plan to measure impact, and also how you're leveraging social media?
Sure. That's a lot. I'll focus on the I'll focus on the Create Jobs. Just try and tell the quick version of how that came about. I'm wearing a wristband, by the way, that says Indivisible on it, which if you can get at Starbucks stores, and 100% of the proceeds for a $5 donation or more goes to this jobs fund, which is administered by Opportunity Finance Network. Mark Pinsky, the CEO of Opportunity Finance Network, is in the back row. They're a terrific partner, but the story of how we came up with this was our CEO, Howard Schultz, had gone on the record of saying and asking other CEOs to do more for the American joblessness crisis, the unemployment crisis, and then he came back to the boardroom and said, "Okay, I've just put out a challenge to other CEOs that they need to do everything in their power to help this crisis in America around joblessness. What are we going to do?" And so people started talking about we should hire a few more people and we should accelerate opening up a plant and maybe open up some new headcount. And his leadership was pretty instrumental in challenging us to go further, to be more innovative, and said, no, we got to do something that's unexpected, that uses our scale for good. He had drawn a picture of the wristband and said, what are we going to do? How are we going to create jobs in America? So we set about, I raised my hand and said, okay, I'm fascinated with crowdfunding. I'm amazed with what Donors Choose and Indiegogo and Kickstarter are doing. I think it's pretty innovative in the digital space. And as a former entrepreneur, I thought it could be about getting capital to small businesses. So thankfully, our community team led me to Mark Pinsky, who explained to me that there's a network of really selfless community lending institutions. Most of them are Treasury certified, and most of them are nonprofit, and they provide financing to small businesses and charter schools and low-income housing and micro entrepreneurs all around the country, and give them loans where traditional banks won't give them loans so that they can grow their business and hire people. So I thanked God that Opportunity Finance Network existed, because we didn't know how we were going to go about doing this as quickly as we wanted to do it. And we were able to strike a partnership, put in place a program, and since we've launched, we've raised a little over $10 million, which, by the way, gets leveraged up to about $70 million of loans. We've granted all this money out to these hundreds of nonprofit community lending institutions, and they are making loans and creating jobs, and we're tracking it. There's actually a jobs audit where we're asking through Opportunity Finance Network, every single loan that gets made by one of the grantees of our program needs to track the jobs created or sustained during the time of this program, and then we post those results on our website. And we're excited, and we were able to get Google and Banana Republic to do some fundraising alongside of us, and we're excited about the success so far.
Thank you. Nick, you talked about your work as a board member of Endeavor, which clearly is a leading organization as it relates to entrepreneurship. Given your experience in developing countries, can you share a little bit about some of the successful approaches and strategies, and how we might think about replicating some of those strategies as it relates to serving entrepreneurs and fueling entrepreneurship in developing countries specifically?
Yeah, sure. So I've had a chance to meet. I've had a chance to meet a number of organizations who are actively funding entrepreneurial programs in developing countries. And drawing on the experience I've learned from Endeavor, I'd say a number of things. One is focus on what's working and what's scalable. There are a lot of really well-intentioned programs that I think either aren't working that well, or even if they do work, are not scalable. And if you think about what's working and scalable, I think it varies a little bit by region. So in countries that are still in the sort of foreign aid phase of development, where generally you have governance problems and it's hard to create a significant private sector or very significant companies, microfinance has been amazingly effective, largely because it's extra institutional. It doesn't rely on the government. It doesn't rely on existing institutions. It's been very successful. I think if you look at countries that are sort of between foreign aid and foreign investment, the key thing there is to help catalyze ecosystems of entrepreneurship. One of the most remarkable characteristics of entrepreneurship, if you study it over history, is when a certain area, as Silicon Valley is probably the best example, but you see it coalescing in New York, you see it in Boston, you see it in Austin, you see it in Israel, you see it in Beijing, Shanghai, select areas of the world. When you get a functioning ecosystem, the ecosystem has a lot of different parts, and governments have a role to play with policies, universities have a role to play with IP policies, venture capital firms and private capital has a role to play, associations and NGOs have a role to play as connective tissue. When you can help catalyze an ecosystem, there is extraordinary leverage. When Endeavor got started in Latin America, there were no words in Brazilian Portuguese, in most of the local countries for entrepreneurship. In fact, the Minister of Education called up Endeavor eventually and said, in Brazil, and said, so what would you guys recommend the word is? You're the experts. And today, Brazil has one of the most thriving entrepreneurial ecosystems in the developing world. It's exciting to see. And its productivity in terms of entrepreneurs has gone up to a stunning degree. So I would focus on helping to catalyze ecosystems in that segment. And the last thing I'd highlight, and this is something that economists don't often talk about, but if you really get into the minds of aspiring entrepreneurs, it's so important, is role models. If you ask Mark Zuckerberg who his heroes were, he'd say Steve Jobs. If you ask Steve Jobs who his heroes were, it's Hewlett and Packard. Every entrepreneur is generally has a few heroes that they are aspiring to be like. And so in a lot of emerging markets, when you get some standout successes, celebrate that, bring those people into the community, have them, give talks. It's electric, the effect that they can have on other aspiring entrepreneurs. If Google were a Mexican company, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Mexico, or if it was a Mexican country, would be on fire right now. So I think celebrating successes through role models is very important.
Definitely, and thank you for that comment, because I do think many of us focus on access to capital, but access to talent and guidance and mentorship is also a very critical skill set for entrepreneurs, a tool for entrepreneurs to have. Jonathan, when you look at the growth in the veterans population in this country, you can't have a successful economic development agenda without focusing on them. Can you talk about the administration's focus on the vets population as it relates to job creation?
Sorry. Yeah, I could talk about that, but I kind of want to talk about something else. So let me say a couple things. So
Who gave me the White House guy on my panel?
So we deeply, powerfully believe that the most valuable natural resource that we have is the talent and the ingenuity of the American people. And I don't think you can find courage at scale anywhere like you can with our veterans and with the folks serving in the military. And so the president and the first lady, the vice president, and Dr. Biden have put a huge emphasis on a program called Joining Forces, which is focused on integrating and helping and facilitating the integration of returning military veterans into the workforce. There go the lights. That's our cue, right? Put particular emphasis on what can we do to improve and accelerate their ability to use their skills and use their talents to get the jobs they deserve and to kickstart our economic recovery. I can't say enough about the good that they do. And in fact, there'll be a big announcement tomorrow on the Jobs Bank that I don't want to preempt, but I can tell you there's some really good news coming on this front, literally in just a few hours. So stay tuned for that. I want to come back to what was asked earlier about heroes. And I really appreciated the comments about Mark Zuckerberg's heroes. I see heroes all over this room. Where's Andrew Yang? Is he here? From Venture for America. Oh, yeah. So this guy is a hero. So imagine the Teach for America model applied to startups, to cultivate and to celebrate the next generation of Mark Zuckerbergs and entrepreneurs. It's an amazing program that's worth sort of noting. And I think Howard Schultz, what Starbucks has done at massive scale, and what he continues to do, because I think if you look at a CSR report, Create Jobs wouldn't fit in the mix, right? Create Jobs doesn't help them from an environmental, or social, or governance point of view, but Create Jobs USA is about pushing the envelope and exemplifying what Jeffrey Schwartz talked about this afternoon. Jeffrey Schwartz, the former CEO of Timberland, which is recognizing that CEOs, like all of us, have a responsibility to strengthen our communities, to do more than just maximize profits, but to also optimize their social return, and to create better communities than where we start. So I think Howard Schultz exemplifies this ideal, and I would look to him as a hero as well. I would encourage all of us here with your tweets. I'm sure all of you, or many of you, are tweeting right now. Who are your heroes? Who are your heroes of social innovation? That's the dialogue we should get started, so that everybody here walks out today with some sense about who are the next generation, who are those role models that we can look to, that we can learn from. Because from Tom Shadyac to Jeffrey Schwartz, there have been just some amazing comments all today, and I would lift those up and hope that they stay with us, long after the reception this evening.
Thank you. Adam, we hear so much today about employees, especially millennials, who really want to work for companies where they feel empowered to make a difference. Can you talk about some of the initiatives Starbucks has in place to empower employees and store managers in that effort?
Sure. I'm glad that you said Howard was your hero, because I would just look like I was sucking up if I said that. But I actually believe it as well. Starbucks is, I'm really honored to work for a company that I've loved and admired for so long. I was an entrepreneur. I still feel like I'm an entrepreneur, but I've taken a couple of corporate jobs for companies and mentors that I really respect. And one of the reasons that Starbucks is such an amazing place to me, always has been, is that it really embraces the notion of balancing a social conscience with profitability. We really believe it. If we don't feel like we're doing a good enough job at it, we push ourselves. We don't wait. We really try not to wait for others to push us. And sometimes we don't go far enough and we make mistakes, but no one's a harder critic on ourselves than ourselves. In terms of why, where that's really being lived by us, is we call our employees partners. The reason we call them partners is that we were, I think we were the first public company in the United States to offer health benefits to even part-time employees. We offered stock options to even part-time employees, and you can imagine with hundreds of thousands of baristas around the world, we have a lot of part-time employees, and so benefits, medical benefits, and stock options, and sharing the wealth with our employees was something that we did early on and called them partners. And we've found that has been returned back to us tenfold by partners, to your point, that really, our employees, our partners, really want to work for a company, just like our customers, who they believe that they share values with. So in our case, we do a couple things. We encourage our baristas to volunteer in their communities all year round, and in particular, we have a global month of service in April. And just to give you an example, last month in April, we did two things. Number one, we asked our store managers and our baristas to join with the customers of those stores to do volunteerism and community service in their neighborhoods, and there was approximately 200,000 hours of community service performed just during the month of April alone. And during that same month, we instituted something with our customers, so that not only could the customers go side by side with their favorite store managers and their baristas to do customer service, but we put $4 million out and said, we're going to distribute this to 124 community organizations and nonprofits and let our customers vote on that. We had about 100,000 customers vote on where that should go, which mostly the most important part is it's shown a light on what we were doing and what our customers could get involved in even after the global month of service. So those are examples of where we got our partners involved, and we believe that you take care of your employees and you take care of your partners, and if you have ethics and integrity as a company, that they'll want to work for you, they'll want to talk to their customers about you, and it ends up being good business, but it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Nick, earlier today we heard about the girl effect and how supporting women is supporting a broader economic development agenda, community development agenda. Can you speak to some of your work with female entrepreneurs?
Sure. So partly by serendipity, partly perhaps by prescient intent, I've ended up supporting an unusually high number of female entrepreneurs, which is not typical in venture capital. If you want to look at an extremely male industry, venture capital will be close to the top of the list. And but anyway, some of the companies I've invested in, the Guilt Group, Care.com, have been founded by women. Some other companies I've invested in have female CEOs. And I actually took that philosophy to the next level. I actually married a female entrepreneur who's a biotech entrepreneur focused on genomics and fertility. And I'd say a couple things. So first, for the female entrepreneurs who are out there, getting back to the hero dynamic that we talked about earlier, it's extraordinary to me how many people look up to you, and what a great example you set for others. When I talk to the female entrepreneurs that I work with, they all harken back to a relatively small number of female entrepreneurs who have been extremely successful and who have gone out of their way to help other women, mentor other women. And I see that cascading and increasing, and it's a wonderful thing to see. I think and I think the importance of female entrepreneurs, the social importance, is even greater in developing countries than it is here, but it's very important everywhere. I think we're at a moment in time that is particularly conducive to female entrepreneurs. And I could talk about this for hours, but let me try to do it in a minute and a half. One reason is that we're living in an age of social media and businesses enabled by social media. If you want to know who's active on social media, it's women. If you want to know who the most communicative half of the species is, it's women. And all the businesses that, so if you look at the percentage of Facebook engagement, the number of tweets, women dominate. If you look at e-commerce, which is taking over as a larger and larger percent of the economy, the consumer economy represents maybe 70% of GDP. Women control the purse strings on the vast majority of that spending. And so it's no accident that if you look at the biggest e-commerce successes of the last 5 years, Gilt, Groupon, Zynga, they are all dominated. 70% of the purchasing is done by women. So I think we're in I think another reason it's a particularly conducive time for female entrepreneurs is in the late 90s, and this is particularly for IT-oriented businesses, if you wanted to start a web business, it was expensive and it was unbelievably technically difficult. Most of the companies were founded by technologists, and they were very engineering heavy, and for whatever combination of reasons, that has tended historically to skew more male than female. Today, it's a much more open, it's a much more level playing field where technology is not, you don't have to get 50 entrepreneurs just to figure out if you're going to be able to launch a website. The cost has come down. It's much easier. Anyone with a brilliant business idea can start a company very quickly. And so it's men and women. It's different age groups. You've got 15-year-olds starting very impressive e-commerce and other web companies. And I think it's a remarkable moment in history. And I think if you look at the number of successful female entrepreneurs, it will likely go up exponentially in the upcoming decades.
Thank you. Jonathan, I just want to give you a quick moment. I know the administration prides itself on being able to source ideas from those of us in the audience today. Can you quickly tell them how they can reach out to you to continue the dialogue after today?
I'm delighted to have the opportunity to do that. Yeah, as I mentioned before, the president believes the answers are not in Washington, they're out there. We're focused on every day. The instruction he gave me personally, he gave many people on his staff, is how do we drive economic recovery and job creation? So I think about using social innovation, models of human capital like national service, civic participation, collective impact, and financial capital like new financial instruments, impact investing, and sort of new models of data. How can we use our resources to drive recovery? But I know that I don't have those ideas. That is to say, they're out there. So does anyone not have one of these books? Good, that means you all got that. You don't have one, Zeev's over here, he'll get you one. So my Twitter handle is in the book. It's J0, bad choice, NATH, you can see my name. You should all tweet me. And if you've got an idea, if you've got a suggestion, if you've got something you think we should do, then you don't have to try to grab me in the hall, you should ping me. And I will respond, and I will listen. Because we realize that the only way we can do this is together. So that's about as open an invitation as you can get. So you have the homework assignment to reach out and let me know what you think we should do.
Thank you, Jonathan, Adam, and Nick, for being with us today. Appreciate it, you're sharing your insights with the audience. Now I want to quickly just go to announcing the 10 not-for-profits, very deserving not-for-profits that will share in the $250,000 in grants that Chase Community Giving will give. First, I'll say it was a very difficult choice we had to make. A number of great selections came in from the roundtables yesterday, from many of you who touch base with our Chase employees, definitely those of you who are active on Twitter. So we appreciate all those suggestions and know that even if you're not one of these 10, Chase Community Giving is launching its next campaign on June 12th. So get to know or become a Chase customer or employee. You will have a chance to nominate and share in $7.5 million that we'll be giving out over the course of the year. So look out for that. So first, our first winner is World Readers that provides kids in developing world with access to digital books. Second is Team Rubicon, who's doing great work with leveraging veterans in disaster recovery. Third is Year Up, a great workforce development program for young teens in key markets across the country. Fourth is the Man Up campaign, doing some great work in activating youth to stop violence against women and girls. Fifth is She's the First, another great organization. Do we have a representative here sponsoring girls' education? 7th is Samasource, another organization providing internet-based work to people around the world. 8th is MoneyThink, also doing great work out of the University of Chicago program, a financial literacy program that we're glad to support. Also, Jonathan gave a great account today, and I think it definitely represented what all of us felt when Steve Gleason presented this morning. So we are proud to announce that Team Gleason will also receive a $25,000 grant from Chase Community Giving. Another one of our wildcard winners that definitely wasn't submitted by anyone at the summit yesterday, but definitely showed up live and well on the Twitter feed, Room to Read is another great organization doing incredible work in Southeast Asia and beyond. And our last winner, which I think Zeev will be happy because I think this transitions nicely into the next event, because we're clearly over our time. We're proud to announce the last grant to Keep a Child Alive, the organization that Alicia Keys founded, doing incredible work in Africa. So thank you again, and please stay tuned. Chase Community Giving, June 12th. If you didn't win today, you have lots more chances to win throughout the year.